Hello everyone, it's Victoria with Nutrition by Victoria and welcome to today's video. For those of you who don't know me, I have a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition and I specialize in helping you to get lean, fit, and healthy effortlessly. That is what I've achieved for myself. I don't even think about the way that I eat or move my body anymore. It just comes naturally, and the results just keep pouring in. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and I am constantly amazed by the results, but most importantly, how much food I get to eat. I get to honor my sweet tooth at every meal. I get to eat as much carbohydrate as I want. And contrary to popular belief out there, carbohydrates are the secret to you achieving those results. So in today's video, we are actually going to be exploring why the low fat component of a of your diet is really important to adhere to. So we're going to be discussing healthy fats today, and dietary fat in general in order to help you better understand why it's important to avoid healthy fats for best results. So, for those of you who don't know, I eat a high carb, low fat, plant-based vegan diet, have done so for almost 14 years now, and it's just the most optimal diet for a human to follow, in my opinion. I wrote up a coaching program that explains all of the details and information and science that you need in order to understand why this works so well. So if you haven't already got a copy of that, click the link in the description of this video and go ahead and take advantage of it being on sale right now. It's all you're going to need actually in terms of nutrition information from this point on. I wrote up my coaching program to be the end all be all so that once you have that foundational metabolic and nutrition information in regards to human health and performance, that's all you're ever going to need. Okay. Of course, more research will continue to come out and support the information that is in my coaching program, but that foundational information is what you need to get started. And I also show you in my coaching program how to get started, how to apply the information to your diet and lifestyle to start getting the results today. Okay. I can guarantee that you're going to start to feel better, but in terms of weight loss, that can be something that can take a while. Most of the clients that I've worked with have had to put in a good 6 months to a year to 2 years of consistently following the protocol in order to get the results. Once the aesthetic results, once the health results come in, okay, then it's smooth sailing from there. And then you just continue to do the diet and lifestyle protocol and, you're winning. You found the holy grail, okay? But I will say that a lot of people stop before they've reached that point for whatever reason, because sometimes the metabolic healing process does require you to gain weight initially. And most people, they're coming to me because they want to lose weight. But if you have calorie restricted, avoided carbohydrates, went on these keto diets, practiced a lot of intermittent fasting, done raw vegan diets, the whole shebang, and then you can expect to have to go through an initial healing phase. I myself had to do that. I gained 60 pounds when I initially adopted a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. But I stuck with it and now, have the results that I always desired from the diets, the restrictive diets that I was following. So that's something really important to keep in mind, as you get a hold of my coaching program, and I really encourage you to also sign up for my coaching group as an adjunct so that you can ask me questions in regards to the information provided in the coaching program, but also in regards to your own situation. I made my coaching group a lifetime membership because I want you to continue to get back to me with troubleshooting, where you're at, okay? Because sometimes things shift as we move forward in life. There's different stages of life that we can go through, such as pregnancy, breastfeeding, menopause, especially for women. Men, it's a little more straightforward in terms of like their hormones and how they respond to life. But for females, we're cyclical and we change. So it's important to recognize that hormones have a lot to do with this, and the whole idea behind following the diet protocol and lifestyle protocol that I recommend is that it puts everything in perfect balance so that you can smoothly sail through the rest of your life, not having to worry about whether your diet is working for you or not. Because if you're following what it is that I wrote out in my coaching program, then you're good to go. Okay, so let's get into today's video. Enough of me rambling, right? So first things first, I found this super old school video of Dr. John McDougall talking about fats and how they affect our blood flow after a meal. So the standard American diet recognizes about 30% of your diet containing dietary fat as being a low fat diet. Now, um, my opinion on a low fat diet is a lot less than that. So if you're following the standard American diet and you're eating about 30% of your diet composition, your macronutrient intake from fats, then you can expect this to happen to your blood post meal. And then, of course, if you're eating more than 30% fat, this is definitely happening post meal.
If you sit down and eat a high-fat meal, that fat in that meal has a direct impact upon how your blood flows. Now, I want to show you something here on the screen, and this is very important for you to watch. What we have is we have the blood circulation flowing here very rapidly. And it goes through the blood vessels, and the blood cells, they hit and they bounce off each other, and they don't stick at all.
So what's really significant about this video footage of your blood circulation is that this is blood flow also on a high carb, low fat diet. Low fat being about 10% of the diet or less. I myself eat about 5% or less of my diet from fat every day. But once your body gets the fats after your meal cleared out, then this is how, blood should be flowing. And the idea behind this kind of blood flow, this blood flow before a meal, okay, is that this is how your body is transporting its nutrients, okay, primarily glucose, all right, as well as other micronutrients as well. But this is your transportation system in your body. Also, this is how your body transports oxygen, okay? Oxygen binds to hemoglobin, which is a part of the red blood cell that transports the oxygen around. So if this is impaired, you can expect your cells to not be receiving the kind of nutrition that they need to in order to function properly.
Normal circulation. Now, these tapes that you're looking at here are taken from guinea pigs, but we see the same thing in people when we look through the whites of their eyes. Now, when you feed them a diet that has 67% of the calories as fat, then what you see is the circulation sticking together and sludging. And as a result, the blood flow is much decreased to the tissues. And what happens is you actually decrease the amount of oxygen in the blood by about 20%.
That looks like rush hour now.
So this footage, John McDougall, I don't know if you can hear it because the volume is pretty low just on the video in general. I have my volume maxed out. This is a animals, a guinea pig specifically, consuming a diet that's 67% fat, and this is how much is impaired blood circulation.
In effect, lasts for hours, and actually the blood doesn't return to normal for about 10 to 12 hours. So what happens is somebody sits down.
And then he just said that the blood flow will not return to normal for 10 to 12 hours post meal. So if you're going to have your fats, have them at dinner time because then you can sleep on it. But, conditions like sleep apnea, we have to take into consideration how the dietary composition of fat is affecting that kind of a medical situation. So basically, what we are gathering here is that dietary fat, the consumption of it, impairs blood circulation. Now, I had said that, a standard American diet containing 30% fat is actually considered to be a low fat diet. So most people who are just eating in a standard American way or a standard Western diet are potentially eating up to 40, 50, 60% of their diet composition in fat. Like if you think about just a standard hamburger and French fry meal, the majority of calories in that meal are going to be coming from fat grams as opposed to carbohydrate. So many, um, you know, health advocates or nutritional scientists will say that meal is high in carbohydrate when in fact it's actually very high in fat. Okay, so we are going to move on here. I've got some more information to just share. That's really what I'm doing here today is sharing information in regards to dietary fat. So let's go to the next. So what that is called, fat impairing blood circulation, is called postprandial hyperlipidemia. So blood circulation post-fatty meal. After consuming a high-fat meal, the body enters a state known as postprandial hyperlipidemia, where blood becomes flooded with fats or triglycerides for up to 8 hours. This can lead to blood vessels stiffening, free radicals attacking, and impaired brain blood flow. The nitric oxide produced by the body is crucial for healthy blood flow, but after a high-fat meal, free radicals increase, destroying nitric oxide, and blood vessels cannot dilate properly, reducing circulation. This temporary vascular damage can affect both young and older adults, with older adults being more vulnerable due to reduced NO production and weakened brain blood flow regulation. To protect blood vessels and brain health, it is recommended to limit high-fat meals, especially those with saturated fats, and to consume more omega-3s and antioxidants. Staying active can also improve circulation and nitric oxide production. So, I'm still seeing like Candy Frazier popping up on my feed, talking about if you want to look like a supermodel or have a bikini model body, to eat all this fatty meat, this meat that is high in saturated fats. That is not how you get slim, okay? That's how you damage your body. And I'm not really sure why somebody would think that it's a good idea to eat a super high fat diet, super low carb diet, because the research actually shows that glucose tolerance or sugar tolerance is impaired by starvation or the taking of diets with a high content of fat, while it is improved by taking diets containing an excess of carbohydrates. So that's why I have the lean body results that I have, is because I'm insulin sensitive, and I've created that coming from calorie restriction, carbohydrate restriction. I did that for years. And initially, I had to go through the uh, adaptation process. It's called adaptive thermogenesis, where my body had to improve its insulin sensitivity because a carbohydrate starved diet, a calorie starved diet, makes you insulin resistant. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Let's see what else I have. Something else that happens from eating a diet that's too high in fat is epithelial damage. Okay, this can occur due to visceral fat accumulation that causes inflammation. So when you have excess visceral fat, which is fat that is around your organs and such, this comes from eating a diet that is high in fat, but also if you yo-yo diet, if you restrict your carbohydrates, if you do any kind of fasting, you're going to accumulate visceral fat, particularly around the midsection, because you are telling your body that there's not enough food available, so it automatically becomes programmed for fat storage. We can survive famines due to insulin resistance, okay? It's what allows us to survive a famine, okay? So after the famine, when we start eating more carbohydrates, and this happened to me, we start packing on the pounds. And that's because we just told our body that it was in a famine. So now it's going to save up for when the next famine is. The way to get yourself out of that cycle is to eat a high carbohydrate, low fat diet that makes your body insulin sensitive, that regulates your cortisol so that you can relax and not worry about, not signal to your body that it needs to worry about being in a famine, okay? Because there's food available, and that food is what's allowing your body to be insulin sensitive and not favor fat storage. Okay. Epithelial damage also is caused by a high-fat diet. Diets rich in, again, saturated fats can increase the risk of plaque buildup in arteries, leading to cardiovascular issues and potentially causing epithelial damage. There's also evidence here that epithelial damage is caused by a disruption in your microbiome, right? This is suggesting microbial, sorry, composition changes. High-fat diets can alter gut microbiota, which may induce epithelial damage and exacerbate inflammatory conditions. So we're talking about leaky gut here. We're talking about SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We're talking about diverticulitis. We're talking about celiac disease. Any kind of inflammatory bowel condition can be exacerbated by dietary fat intake, eating too much of it. So, and we're going to be talking soon about how much is too much, okay? Intestinal disease pathology. So, prolonged exposure to high fat diets can worsen gut inflammation and lead to epithelial damage. So, you know, I think what we're gathering from this is that dietary fats cause inflammation. Inflammation is what breaks down our body, particularly our intestinal wall. And then fatty acids, exposure to fatty acids, key word here is acids, can induce inflammation, and epithelial mesenchymal transition contribute to epithelial damage. So potentially also causing things like cancer, particularly in this case, colon cancer and heart disease. So if you want to avoid those things or be as preventative as possible, then you're going to want to stick to a lower fat diet, particularly low in saturated fat. And what diet is the lowest in saturated fat content just by default? If you're not even controlling for overt fat intake, is going to be a plant-based diet. And more information is actually coming out about how beneficial plant-based diets are for humans. So that's the new thing, Uh, not everything out there, information-wise is out to get you. A plant-based diet is going to be beneficial for everyone. Okay. Next up, we've got, is this one? Okay. We're going to be talking about the Randall cycle here too, but I want first to talk about this here. Okay, I talked about this in my previous video that I did about Melissa Alexandria, about advanced glycation end products in food and a practical guide to their reduction in the diet. So this research is really significant because it is what validates that fats, dietary fats, are harmful to the human body. Now, let's see here. Animal-derived foods, particularly, that are high in fat and protein are generally AGE rich and prone to new AGE formation during cooking. So AGEs are dietary advanced glycation end products that are known to contribute to increased oxidant stress and inflammation, which are linked to the recent epidemics of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And I would even put cancer in there as well. And the reason why they're so harmful again, animal-derived foods that are high in fat and protein are generally AGE rich, okay? Is because they increase oxidant stress and inflammation in the body. So, what we were just talking about with blood flow here and also with epithelial damage is that dietary fat is inflammatory. Okay, actually, when it comes to omega-3 fatty acids and why they for a while, and I guess even now still, have been heavily promoted is because they can neutralize some of that inflammatory effect of other fatty acids, but they're still fatty acids as well. And my suggestion actually is to just avoid eating as much overt fats as you can, and then you won't have to worry about, quenching inflammation with omega-3 fatty acids because that recommendation too, I don't even think that there is a RDA for omega-3 fatty acids, but you want your fatty acid intake to be low, as low as possible, and then to come from non-overt fat sources. So we're talking about like fruits and vegetables that naturally contain omega-3 fatty acids as well, and they are enough to meet your essential fatty acid requirements in your diet for your body.
Well,
So even the essential fatty acids, the omega-3 fatty acids in large quantities can cause this increased oxidant stress and inflammation. And we are going to take a look at the chart below to see which foods, have the highest AGE content and which foods have the lowest. So again, animal-derived foods that are high in fat and protein are generally AGE rich and prone to new AGE formation during cooking, and this can increase oxidant stress and inflammation in the body. So we want to keep oxidant stress and inflammation low in the body to keep disease at bay because advanced glycation end products, also known as glycotoxins, are a diverse group of highly oxidant compounds with pathogenic significance in diabetes and in several other chronic diseases. So, what it tends to be the causative factor for all disease development and even weight gain is oxidant stress and inflammation. So by nipping it at the source, okay, the food source, we're going to be able to better our health, lose weight, and also prevent disease. So let's go down here and take a look at this chart. I also want to point out that the formation of AGEs is a normal part of metabolism, but if excessively high AGEs are reached in tissues in the circulation, they can become pathogenic, okay? So that's what we want to manage. So all foods are going to produce some amount of AGEs, but we want the amount that is produced to be low. Okay. So we're going to start with fats because it's the first category. So what we've got here is the AGE content of food items, starting with fats. We've got AGE content per 100 grams and then AGE per like typical serving size. So I'm going to focus on the 100-gram content just because serving sizes can vary, but both are significant. Okay, and it does include the serving size here, a typical serving size. But again, I'm just going to focus on the 100-gram serving. All right, almonds. Everybody's like, almonds are a healthy fat, okay? AGE content of 5,473. If you roast them, it goes up to 6,000. 650. Avocados, again, a healthy fat. Avocados are promoted for weight loss and actually as being anti-inflammatory. But it's important to understand that avocados have an AGE rating of 1,577 per 100 grams. Here's where things get really messy when we start to bring animal products into the picture. We've got whipped butter. This is dairy butter coming from a cow. Okay, 26,000 is the AGE rating for butter. Okay, cashews, 6,730. Again, another healthy fat. So we're talking about plant-based fats and animal-based fats here. And I do want to make you understand that plant-based fats do contain a lot of AGEs as well. Not nearly as much as animal products, but it's still important to keep your intake, even of the plant-based fats, in a smaller portion. Okay, we've got chestnuts, raw, 2,700. Roasted, whenever you're cooking, you're going to increase the AGE content of the food. It goes up to 5,000. Cream cheese, 10,000. Margarine, which can be plant-based, 17,000. Okay, so whenever we're concentrating the fat content, the AGE content is going up. All right. Mayonnaise, 9,400. I never liked mayonnaise. I thought it was disgusting. Actually, and I think avocado is like the mayonnaise fruit, which makes sense because, it's fatty and also has a, decent AGE rating, but not nearly as high as regular mayonnaise. So, avocado would be a good swap there. But ideally, I do think that they make like a plant-based, like low-fat mayonnaise option if that's a food that you're trying to transition off of. So, what I do a lot of times with my clients is I take the diet that they're eating right now, if it's not already high-carb, low-fat, plant-based, and I start to transition using items like, let's say you can't get off of butter, then we're going to swap to like a spray butter where, it still has the flavor there, but the fat content is a lot lower. It's plant-based and, it's a transitional item that by using it is going to improve your health because the AGE content is going to be significantly lower. Okay, olives, 1,670 for their AGE rating per 100 grams. Peanut butter, 7,000. And a lot of peanuts, are roasted, before they become peanut butter too. Dry roasted peanuts, 6,447. I will leave a link for this study too in the description of this video so you can, go through it yourself and kind of figure out ways to lower the AG content of your diet. All right. Ironically, pistachios is actually pretty low. It looks like they're the lowest of the fats here at 300. Even soybeans, roasted soybeans, 1,670. Walnuts, again, a healthy fat that is promoted for its, omega-3 fatty acid content. Well, roasted walnuts have an AG rating of 7,887 per 100 grams. Okay, now we're moving on to liquid fats. So we're moving into oils. Okay, we've got canola oil at 9,000. This is why you, as a plant-based eater, want to avoid eating oils. Okay, at a rating of 9,000 for canola oil, it's going to be pro-inflammatory. Actually, this gets into the whole concept of avoiding seed oils, right? Avoiding processed foods, which is a big like to do with the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again movement, right? But let's use the research to understand the messaging, right? So the reason why seed oils, then we got corn oil on here too at 2,400, cottonseed oil 8,520 for AGE rating, is because their AGE content is so high. Okay, olive oil, 11,000. Now, olive oil is not considered a seed oil, but its AGE content is very high and it becomes even higher if you cook with it. It's typically recommended not to cook with olive oil, and olive oil is often looked at as a healthy fat. But is it really? I'll leave it up to you, but it does have an AGE rating of 11,000. Okay, peanut oil, 11,000 for its AGE rating. And I'm rounding here, there's more specific numbers as well. Sesame oil, 21,680 for its AGE rating. That's again per 100 grams. Now, most people aren't eating 100 grams of sesame oil, but at a 5-gram serving, it still contains an AGE reading of 1,000. Okay, now we're getting into salad dressings. Well, also sunflower oil. Again, another seed oil that is common in a lot of processed foods. AGE rating of 3,000. So significantly lower than sesame oil. Salad dressings. The lower fat options are going to have a lower AGE rating. So we've got Italian salad dressing at 273, Thousand Island 187. Caesar is going to be higher because it contains dairy and it's higher in fat at 740. Okay, meat and meat substitutes. All right, bologna. I used to eat this as a kid. Luckily, I stopped pretty early on and didn't eat it all that often because its AGE rating is 1,631. It also belongs in the processed meat category, and processed meats are group 1 carcinogens, meaning that they are known to cause cancer. Hopefully, with all the plant-based eating that I've been doing, I've been able to flush any of the remains out of my body. Okay, hot dogs or frankfurters here. A broiled frankfurter has an AGE rating of 11,270. The significance of this is that that's a 100-gram serving, and a typical serving size is going to be about 90 grams. So one broiled frankfurter, okay, which is like a grilled frankfurter, something you do on the grill in the summertime, when you're having a family picnic, right? AGE rating of 10,000. Okay, stop eating hot dogs. Opt for a soy hot dog. They're much tastier, lower in fat, and aren't going to be carcinogenic. Okay, ground beef, 3,833. Uh, let's see here. Lots of beef. All the beef is in the thousands. Roast beef, 6,000. Roast beef sandwich from Arby's, getting a big whack of AGEs there. Okay, broiled steak, 7,479. I was with a person over the weekend who was saying, that their favorite food was like filet mignon and ribs and things like that. But I'm sure that they are not aware of this kind of information that could potentially save their life. This person was younger than myself and I'm 38. So it's important to be aware of this information, and that's the purpose of my channel, is to provide education, nutrition, education, and information so that you can make the best choices for your body and then live the best life. Okay. Like, I have so much energy to do things, and I have the body of my dreams, and my health is incredible. Who doesn't want that? Okay. I think that that's what every nutrition influencer is trying to sell you, although what they're selling you is not actually going to create what it is that you want. That you're going to end up buying like supplements, and most of them are doing something kind of artificial. A lot of people are doing PEDs now. You don't need to do any of that. You don't need to eat a high protein, low carb diet. You can eat all the carbs you want and get the results that you desire as well, with the health to match. Okay. All right, pan fried steak, 10,000 AGE rating. Steak strips, 6,851. If it's fried in canola oil, it goes up to 9,000, almost 10,000. Okay, let's see here. A grilled steak on a George Foreman grill, 7,416 AGE rating. Okay, poultry. Roasted chicken, 8,800. Oven fried breaded chicken breast. My mother used to make this when I was a kid. An AGE rating of 9,961 for a 100-gram serving. Most people are eating 100-gram servings, if not more, when they're consuming these foods or non-foods, really like body parts of animals, of dead animals. I really can't like rationalize why in 2025 people are still eating corpses. Like, hopefully in the next 10 years it'll get phased out, but we'll see. As it doesn't look like we're moving too quickly in that direction just yet. Okay. But if you eat your chicken breast raw, the AGE rating is only 769. Yeah, so cooking fat and protein deranges the amino acid and fatty acids that are contained within those, um, pieces of flesh, which also contributes to this higher AGE rating. And the significance of AGEs too, in terms of it translating to your health, is that the more AGEs you consume, the more you can expect your hemoglobin A1C to go up. And that's because hemoglobin A1C is actually a detecting glycation of your red blood cells. So, eating foods that are high in fat and high in protein are going to increase your hemoglobin A1C. And we see this actually pretty commonly amongst keto carnivore eaters, where they have this higher than normal hemoglobin A1C. And you would think, well, how is this happening? Because I'm not eating carbohydrates. Well, there's always going to be sugar in your blood, even if you're not eating carbohydrates, because we have backup systems to manage blood sugar levels and make sure that there's constantly enough available so that we don't die because our cells depend on sufficient glucose in order to create ATP so that we can survive and function and have energy. All of our cells need to be generating ATP, otherwise, we are not going to make it. Okay, so gluconeogenesis is the main driver for glucose production in the absence of sufficient dietary glucose. So, when we're running that, we're also running higher cortisol. And all this information is contained within my coaching program. So, get a copy and learn the facts about human metabolism so that you don't get caught up in these like fad diets that destroy your health. Because most of the people who've come to me, from like a keto carnivore diet all have some level of insulin resistance, high cholesterol levels, elevated hemoglobin A1C. It can get corrected pretty quickly, but sometimes, it takes a little bit of time going through that adaptive thermogenesis where your body has to get used to metabolizing glucose properly again. All right, let's see here. Pork, bacon. This has the highest AGE rating and it's America's favorite food, right? 91,000 AGE rating for 100 grams. Most people are probably eating 100 grams of bacon in one sitting. Okay, we are going to, now we're in the fish category. All of these animal pieces have significantly high AGE ratings, okay, in the thousands. Ideally, you're going to want to aim for foods that are in the hundreds or less, okay? The tens or the hundreds. All right, cheese. Everybody loves cheese. I never like cheese. I think it's disgusting. Parmesan cheese, an AGE rating of 16,900. American cheese, low fat even, AGE rating of 4,000. Okay, this is coming from the fat and the protein. This is why we don't want to consume a high fat diet because we're getting all of these AGEs in our body that are causing oxidant stress and inflammation and damaging our system. So stay away. Okay, now we're getting into soy. Soy burger. 100 AGE rating for a 100-gram serving. Not too bad. Things are starting to look a little bit better. But if you broil your tofu, it puts it up to 4,000. Again, because tofu contains fat and protein predominantly in terms of its macronutrient composition. Regular tofu, 6,000 or 628, soft boiled. So if you're air frying your tofu, you're significantly increasing the AGE content and increasing, oxidant stress and inflammation in your body. So even though it's plant-based, it is a better option than eating animal flesh in terms of its AGE content, but still you need to not be making this a huge part of your diet. So you're probably asking at this point, Victoria, what do I eat? Okay. Um, I do want to, okay, here's eggs. One large egg fried, 2,749 for its AGE rating. Egg white powder, 1,000. Egg yolks. Some people are drinking egg yolks. 1,000 for its AGE rating for 100 grams. All right, let's get into carbohydrates. Those are my favorite. Okay, a bagel, 133. A bagel toasted goes up to 167. So a little bit of an increase in the AGE rating there, but because the bagels are low fat and low in protein, the AGE rating is naturally going to be lower. So this is why a high carbohydrate diet works so well for managing your health, because its AGE content is naturally low. Okay. Pita bread, 53. But if we look at croissants, we got a butter croissant from Starbucks here, AGE rating of 1,000. Okay, so the fat content with the carbohydrate makes a big difference. So we want to go for low fat carbs. Okay. Breakfast cereals, cornflakes, 233 for the AGE rating. Okay, Fruit Loops, 67. Again, these are low fat foods. Okay. Ironically, though, we've got Life cereal. Huh? Mm-hmm. Has an AG rating of 1,000. And I think that that is because of the way that it's cooked. Okay, so high heat cooking is also going to increase AGE content. Same with Rice Krispies here. For a 100-gram serving, you got 2,000 AGE rating. So that is because of the way that the cereal is processed. So this is where processed foods get their, bad rep too. And it's because of the cooking process as well. So AGE content is increased when there's fat, when there's protein, and when there's super high heat cooking. Okay, but your oatmeal here, instant oatmeal prepared, Quaker Oats, AGE rating of 14. So oats are good. All right. Grains and legumes. Beans are in the hundreds here. So we got red kidney beans canned, 191 for the AGE rating. That is because they're a little higher because they contain more protein. Pasta cooked, 112 for the AGE rating. Again, pasta has a bit more protein in it as well. White rice, my favorite. I eat it every day for dinner, and actually, one of my kids is getting into some white rice right now. AGE rating of 9. 9. Okay, for white rice. That's why the Asian cultures, traditional Asian cultures who have eaten a rice-based diet have had the lowest rates of all-cause mortality and have been able to live very long lives because white rice is low in AGEs, which means it's low in creating oxidant stress and inflammation in the body. Okay. Okay, starchy vegetables, corn, we have an AGE rating of 20, sweet potato 72, white potato 17. Okay, what's next? But potato chips fried in oil, the AGE rating goes up to 2,883. So fats are causing inflammation. They're increasing AGE content. So they are kind of, based on the research that I'm showing and the information that's being shared, bad all around. So we want to keep them low in the diet for best health. And then the fat you eat is the fat you wear. Because metabolically speaking, when we consume dietary fats, especially in excess of our caloric needs and in excess of our energy needs for the day. I don't really like to use the word calorie. Calorie just represents a unit of heat, potential heat measurement in a gram of carbohydrate or fat. But when you eat fat in excess of your needs, okay, which for everybody it's going to be different, right? Basically, if you're underweight, eat more fats. If you're overweight, eat less fats. If you're at a healthy weight, you can find out how much fat that you can tolerate based on whether it's going to move your weight up or down, okay? But ultimately, you want to be eating a low-fat diet so that your BMI is falling within a healthy, normal range. And just kind of go from there. What I tell people is to start with no overt fats. Like go a period of time without any overt fats in your diet. And then if you desire to bring them back in and you're happy with where your body weight is, then you can do that, but be mindful of the AGE content of those fats that you're consuming and also how they're impacting your health and how they're impacting your weight. If you're in a weight maintenance, having a little bit more fat in your diet is okay, but again, less is best in terms of fat intake for overall health, okay? Unless you are underweight, but even people who are underweight, oftentimes I find that just eating more carbohydrates can bump you up into that healthy BMI category, and then you're good to go. So, we have to eliminate the chance for under eating first before we, look at adding in more fats. First, we bump up the carbs because they're low in AGE content, and then maybe look into adding a bit of fats to the diet. So in terms of how much should you be consuming, I would say if weight loss is the goal, which it's the goal for a lot of people, 5% or less of your macronutrient intake on a daily basis should be coming from fats. You can use Chronometer to figure that out. Or 10 grams of fat a day if you're talking grams. Okay, so we got percentage, 5% for weight loss, grams, 10 grams or less. Okay, so that means you're eating predominantly like fruit and rice, and that's how I eat. But we'll go through a few more foods here. Also, to just share AGE content as well. Fruit Pop frozen. I recommend having this as a snack. It has an AGE content of 18. Okay, let's see here. Fruits. Apple, 13 for its AGE rating. Banana, 9. Cantaloupe, 20. Coconut cream. I know I was looking for this during the Melissa Alexandria video because she used a lot of coconut milk in her foods. AGE rating of 933. Okay, so fat content bumps up AGE content. Okay, dates, 60 for their AGE content. Um, Somebody asked me about dried figs and why the AG content is so high. For a 100-gram serving, dried figs has 2,663. That's because when you dry something, especially something that contains seeds, if you ever bite into a fig, a dried fig, it contains a ton of seeds. That's going to increase the AG rating of a food. So dates are much lower, even though they're just as sweet, if not sweeter, because they don't contain seeds. Okay. So carrots, 10, celery, 43, cucumber, 31. Also, the water content of a food plays a role as well here. So high water content, I guess you'd say low calorie density, fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes. Maybe not so much the legumes, but all have the lowest AGE content. Okay. Legumes are a little higher because of their protein content. Onion, 36, tomato, 23. But if you grill vegetables, it's going to increase the AGE content. So this uses as an example of broccoli, carrots, and celery, an AGE content of 226. Okay. The last thing I'm going to go over here before I wrap things up is that sugar has an AGE content of 0. So sugar is not causing oxidant stress and inflammation in your body, but you're how you're eating overall and your insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, so your glucose tolerance, is significantly impacting your health. So sugar is often the scapegoat for diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And it shouldn't be because its AGE rating is 0. Now, I'm not telling people that their entire diet should just be sugar, okay? But sugar is not the bad guy here, okay? It's the fat and the protein content of your diet. If you lower that down, You can have sugar as much as you want. I say use sugar to taste, and it's a non-issue. Okay. In fact, in the dietetic factors influencing the glucose tolerance and the activity of insulin, if you read through this paper, they actually use sugar to improve glucose tolerance in the study. Again, it is established that sugar tolerance is impaired by starvation or the taking of diets with a high content of fat, while it's improved by the taking of diets containing excessive carbohydrate. I will link this down below as well. The last thing that I want to go over here is the Randle cycle. So, the Randle cycle is basically the flux between whether we are predominantly burning carbohydrate or we're burning fats for energy production in our cells. And what's really interesting is that fatty acid syndrome, which is when our body is favoring fat oxidation for energy production, yummy, um, is like the gateway to becoming insulin resistant. Okay, so even in this PubMed article, they have this section here. This is just going over the Randle cycle. Here, I'll attach this below, but it's the Randle cycle revisited, a new head for an old hat, where they're just, reviewing what the Randle cycle is and its implications on health and metabolism. And so basically, something that's really interesting is that they figured out a long time ago what was causing insulin resistance. I mean, Percival Hemsworth did in his article that was published in 1934. And even here, Randall, which the Randall cycle is named after, in 1963 noted that several abnormalities of carbohydrate metabolism common to many endocrine and nutritional disorders, including starvation, diabetes, and Cushing's syndrome, are associated with a high plasma concentration of fatty acids. So this means that the body is favoring fatty acid metabolism, or fatty acid oxidation rather, for energy production. They added that the high concentration of fatty acids stands in a causal relationship to these abnormalities of carbohydrate metabolism and suggests that it is a distinct biochemical syndrome which could appropriately be called the fatty acid syndrome. This remarkably prescient observation opened the way for the investigation of the role of fatty acids in the establishment of insulin resistance. Okay, so what we have here is evidence that fatty acids, like if you are favoring fatty acid oxidation as your primary method for creating cellular energy, you have insulin resistance. So all of the carnivore people, all of the keto people, all of the even plant-based folks who eat a high-fat diet have a form of insulin resistance. Okay. And in the case of diabetes, what I find to be really interesting is that they're utilizing gluconeogenesis predominantly for energy production because the cell is unable to receive enough glucose due to this insulin resistance. So our backup biochemistry has to take over in regards to energy production. So when that happens, regardless of why, whether it's because you are avoiding sufficient carbohydrates in the instance of starvation. And I think that's really interesting that this article acknowledges starvation, as well as Percival Hemsworth's article acknowledges starvation as a driver for insulin resistance, because so many folks think that calorie restriction, carbohydrate restriction, low calorie diets are the answer to weight loss. And in fact, they're the answer to becoming insulin resistant and then potentially developing things like diabetes, heart disease, and aging prematurely. So it's really important to understand that element, like let's say you think that you've been eating a healthy diet your whole life, but then as you're getting older, you're developing all these conditions, right? Hypothyroid, what else? elevated cholesterol levels, these can all be due to your cells not receiving sufficient glucose. Okay. So, the way to overcome insulin resistance, right, is to become insulin sensitive. And insulin sensitivity is an easy one. All you got to do is eat sufficient carbs and eat a low fat diet. And be consistent with it. It's not going to happen overnight. Your body has to adapt to this, okay? It has to get used to sufficient carbohydrates coming in. It's kind of like you've treated your body poorly and it's reacting so, right? And in order to correct that, you have to be really good to your body, really nice to your body. In fact, Cushing's syndrome, which was acknowledged in this Randall cycle article, is a disease that comes about due to high cortisol. Okay, carbohydrates lower cortisol. Carbohydrates are correct insulin resistance. So we want to, acknowledge that our diet should be predominantly high carbohydrate. Okay, so where do fats fall into this, right? It's going to be dependent largely on your current weight and hormonal function, and also your palate, right? So, and also like what stage of life are you in? Let's say if you're a child. With children, the way that I look at fat intake is it still needs to be moderated, but you also want the child to receive sufficient carbohydrates, and then after the diet is sufficient in carbohydrate, then letting them kind of navigate how much fat that they're going to consume. But also try not to, like, fat is a sneaky one because carbohydrate is typically a Trojan horse for fat intake. And a lot of times, a high carbohydrate food, right, like a potato, becomes problematic when you fry it in oil, right? And then the AGE content is higher, the inflammatory uh, impact is higher. So those are some things to consider. So it's not the potato that's the problem, it's the oil that's being added, right? So we need to kind of approach it in that way. But what I would say is, as an adult person, if you have weight to lose, fat intake should be no more than 5% of your diet and at no more than 10 grams a day. And then if you know, are happy with your weight, don't, have weight to lose, so you're in a healthy BMI range, then maybe going up to 10 or 15% fat is okay. But I would say that 30% fat in the human diet would be borderline too much. You're going to be looking at the potential for insulin resistance, even with sufficient carbohydrate intake. And I do think also that when you're consuming sufficient carbohydrates, your desire for fats naturally decrease. And I've noticed this in myself. Like, I have no desire to eat any kind of fatty foods whatsoever because I always am eating sufficient carbohydrates. So, a desire for fat, a craving for fats, one is a conditioned response based on what you've been giving your body. And two would be a signal, and even if it's a conditioned response, it's still a signal that your body needs more carbohydrate. Your body needs more energy. So, you increase the carbs, lower the fat, and you're going to fix a lot of things in your body. All right, last thing, then I'm going to get off of here, is my coaching program. So I'm just going to show you guys a little excerpt from my coaching program. This is my own food pyramid that I created, and you can see that in terms of your dietary composition, the base of the pyramid here is carbohydrate. Okay, we've got our starches and fruits that you're going to be building your meals from. These are your foundational foods. Then you've got your vegetables and your sugar. I put sugar in there because sugar is a carbohydrate, right? So in terms of carbs sources, you're going to be getting it from fruits, sugars, and starches, right? So this is the base of your diet. Of course, sugar, the amount that's in your diet is going to be a lot less in terms of volume than, your fruits and your starches, but it's still an important component, particularly if you're not able to source a lot of sweet fruit or drink sweet juice or things like that. So it's one of those things where you're going to use it to taste. Then you've got your vegetables. So I think this is my diet, okay, is fruits, starches, predominantly rice, sugar to taste, and always vegetable side dish with my dinner meal. Legumes I put in the next category because this is an optional item if you want to include legumes in your diet. If you're looking to increase the protein content of your diet and it be, so in a healthy way with a low AGE content relative to animal flesh, then you're going to want to choose legumes. But if you don't want to eat them, you don't have to either, especially if you're getting enough calories in a day from carbohydrates, you're going to be easily meeting your protein needs. Protein needs for a woman is 46 grams a day for the RDA and 56 grams a day for men. And then plant fats are at the top. This is completely optional. This is the smallest, macronutrient component of your diet, right? So this should be used sparingly, and per desire based on your health too. Do you need to gain weight? Do you need to lose weight? Do you need to adjust your, cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, things like that? Do you need to improve your insulin sensitivity? Then you're going to avoid the plant fats. But they can be used, ad libitum or sparingly, based on your situation. And I do offer one-on-one coaching. It is on sale right now as well. Again, the link is in the description of this video to my one-on-one coaching, and I can help you navigate how to build your diet, okay? And again, this is in my coaching program as well. So plant fats is going to be nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut, peanuts, soybeans, durian, vegetable oils, all those foods that we saw on the AGE chart to be higher in AGE content, right? So the fruits and the starches, low in AGE content. The sugars in the vegetables, low in AGE content. The legumes, a little bit higher, but still low. And the plant fats had the highest rating in terms of the plant foods, but then, your animal foods, we want to avoid those completely. If health and weight loss is our is our goal, right? And disease prevention long term. So I hope that all of this information makes a lot of sense. I know this is kind of a loaded video. I really just wanted to get all this information out there to clear up any kind of confusion about healthy fats. A lot of people are using the fats to lower their appetite, right? Because fats take a lot longer to digest, so they can induce gastroparesis, which is delayed stomach emptying. So you're feeling like fuller for longer, but it comes at a cost, okay? And oftentimes if somebody's using the fats to keep their carbohydrate content low, then they have a form of insulin resistance. So the only way you're going to know if that's the case for you is you start eating more carbs and you lower the fat content of your diet, or you can take a glucose tolerance test. That'll kind of indicate things for you as well. All right, that's it for today's video. Leave any comments or questions down below. Thank you again for joining, and please like, share, and subscribe. Get a copy of my coaching program if you haven't already. Sign up for my coaching if you'd like to work with me as well. All right, bye everyone. Till next time.